I like that.
Walk away.
I like that a lot. Wow, that's really good.
Delicious. So good.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
Delicious. Yeah, it's awesome. Really good.
I love it. Oh yeah.
I could eat that all the time. Where should we buy it?
Right. Good afternoon, Oorsee family. I've got JH with me today. He lives in Texas and he's going to tell us about his business making biltong for these American pallets. JH, do you want to just do an introduction? Tell us where you came from in South Africa and how you got to be in Texas and kind of how long you've been there, please.
Sure. We came over to Texas, lived in Houston in 2016. Me and my family, wife and two kids. Um, then started the business in 2019. I came over as part of a working for an aviation company. Then was looking for biltong, and a good friend of mine said I should try jerky. Tried it, didn't like it. Then made biltong and made it for his family. And he actually said, "Hey, this needs to be a business." And then we kind of started it from there. Completely different from any sort of expertise I had before arriving in the US. And yeah, now that's kind of what we do.
So Houston was not necessarily a conscious choice. It was a business. The company brought you over, or you came over for work?
Yeah, that's right. The company I was working for in Joburg originally actually got acquired by a business based in Miami that had a large office in Houston. It's in the jet fuel, primarily in the jet fuel arena. And when they acquired the business, they didn't really need two executives in South Africa. It was a relatively small office comparatively. And the business that bought us had more than 5,000 employees, so they were involved in a lot of consolidation. Actually offered my boss at the time the job in here in Houston, and his wife didn't much care for the heat and humidity. And mine said, "Well, it sounds fun." So, so I guess we got lucky with her sense of adventure, and ultimately that landed us the position here. You know, very, very fortunate. They paid for visas and for relocation costs and for just, you know, it made it so much easier than some of the stories I've heard is when you have someone backing you like that.
I mean, it's very similar to our story. My wife was transferred through her company, and we ended up in Orlando. Now, if you're South African and you've been to Durban, you think that's hot and humid. You've never experienced anything like Houston or Orlando when it comes to that kind of heat, humidity. I mean, it's at next level.
I thought I was ready for the extremes. You know, I thought that, oh, you know, I went to university at Tuckies in Pretoria, and that place gets pretty hot. And I had an uncle that used to live in Phalaborwa, so we would visit them from time to time. And I remember that as being hot. And we used to go to Mams and Tody for holidays when I was really small, and I remember that as hot. And they all just pale into
No.
comparison with Houston. It's
Yeah.
I always say it's like living on the inside of a jockstrap, which I probably shouldn't say out loud, but it's just so bad.
No, I mean it compares more. I'd say Orlando is and Houston very similar. You know, close to the ocean, very humid. It compares more with Dubai than it compares with Durban in
Sure.
terms of heat and humidity. It's not Durban. Durban is cool and a temperate climate compared to what we're talking about. It's very, very hot for very long in the year.
Yes, I think what caught me is that it never cools down. You know,
Yeah.
that even at 5 a.m. in the morning, it's still 30 degrees Celsius and 85% humidity. It's terrible.
But I mean,
I live in
Texas,
Dallas now, which
yeah,
is a lot better. I
yeah.
will I will say that. Dallas is probably something like Pretoria. It still gets very hot in the summer, but we don't have the humidity. It does cool down some at night. Um, we actually had a whole week of snow, which is still, I'm still a Vali, so to me, snow is just the most magical thing. I think from a climate perspective, Dallas has been a welcome change.
Well, that's what I wanted to just mention is that a lot of South Africans choose Texas and they love watching videos about South Africans moving to the US and going to Texas. And it is a massive state. It's about half the size of South Africa. So you can't say what's the weather like in South Africa. I mean, it's too diverse, and Texas is similar.
That's right.
Yeah. When you go to the
Yes.
north and you're near Amarillo or those places, it's big farm country. There's some mountainous areas, so you have to think of it like a half the size of South Africa. And a lot of South Africans really prefer the weather there, especially when you're not on the coast and it's not that humid. It becomes more like Pretoria weather, that type of thing. So. Life in Dallas, what's it like? I mean, explain to people the size of the city. They might not know much about it. Can you just talk us through what a typical day is for
Sure.
you commuting, or what's life like living in Dallas?
Yeah, so um we live probably 20 miles, what's that, about 30 kilometers from where my office is. Which is about, funny enough, I used to live in Lone Hill, just north of Johannesburg, and used to commute to Edenvale. So it's roughly the same drive.
Yeah.
But I had that William Nicol off ramp that still gives me nightmares, and
Oh, yeah.
then the N3 and that little bit of the R21, I think it is. Um, that used to take me an hour in traffic. Here it takes me 30 minutes. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of cars, there's a lot of just people, but you have the infrastructure to support it. It's not as extreme as Houston. Houston has highways that'll blow your mind. There's one piece I always, when I drive that, I take a picture on Google Maps because take any three of the eight right lanes and there's 10 lanes going in the same direction. It looks like somebody made a sport brinkie about it. But
Yeah.
Dallas is a lot smaller, and Dallas doesn't like it when you call it smaller than Houston, but it feels smaller. You have to throw Fort Worth and Dallas and Arlington together to kind of come up with what Houston is.
Yeah.
So for us, it feels like moving to a smaller city, because Houston was everything is 45 minutes away. Doesn't matter where you're going. Dallas, everything is 30 minutes away. That's the way I imagine it. But from a adjustment perspective, very similar to uh, parts of the north of Johannesburg in terms of the size of the houses. The houses are probably a little bit bigger. The yards are relatively similar. So not big adjustment from that perspective. My dad always says he lives in Europe now, and he mentions how what big of a struggle it was for the furniture to fit into the houses there because it's so
Yeah.
much
Yeah. It's
smaller.
tiny.
And we got here and we bought furniture to fill up the space because,
Yeah.
we didn't want to move it that much. Just the size makes a difference.
And you have the
Um,
luxury of sitting in traffic in a F-250 pickup truck the size of a small tank. You know?
that's right. And I've got a little truck. I've got the Ford Tacoma, which is the size of I guess, a Hilux.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
similar to
get,
South African sizes. Here they call that a small or a entry level
yes, it's
size
a, it's a
truck.
half truck, or
Half truck.
yeah, my local friends call it the little truck, and I'm like, hey, this would be a normal size truck where I'm from.
Yeah, and size
And
doesn't matter. It's how you
that's
drive
right.
it,
It's
right?
what you do with it. So
Yeah. So, uh, so life in Dallas, right? What about the wife and the kids? A lot of people now, with obviously this refugee status push, a lot of people are looking to come to the US. or at least it's brought the option to kind of the public front and center, right? But what is it actually like if you're coming over for your kids to settle in, wife to make friends, you guys to make friends? What's the social life and academic life like for the children and for the wife?
Yeah, so I think for the kids, it's depends on where you go, but the suburbs around the big cities, the schools are phenomenal. You get a private school experience, and you pay for it on your property taxes. Just the level of care and attention that they give to, if there are struggles with, learning, maybe a bit of ADHD or things like that, there's
Mm,
an awful lot of just support available.
yeah.
The quality of the education itself is good. I'd like a little bit more international exposure, just
Mm,
in general, but we are still in the States. But I was trying to help my son with eighth grade math the other day. And that was just as much as a challenge as I thought it would be. It's not like they're learning stupid math or anything. So the
yeah.
quality, I think, compared to, again, one could make an argument that perhaps other places in the world have it better or have a more rounded approach, but certainly compared to your average public school in South Africa, the public schools here are just on quality of education equal, and on the size of the classrooms, you have to pay hundreds of thousands of rands to find classrooms with 15 kids in it, and that's what all my kids are, all of them, both of them have. So from that perspective, it's really good. Both Houston and Dallas have large international populations, so our kids slotted in very easily. They have, local friend groups. Um, so, they were by far the easiest. I think for me and my wife, it's more challenging. You could default and just join South African community groups. The challenge is then you're always just in South African community groups. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if you're going to be in the States, you need to be in the States. And I've just learned so much from, Americans.
Mm,
They are phenomenally uh, complicated and interesting people.
mm,
And Texans are some of the best people I know. We were in Harvey, which that big hurricane that blew through Houston in 2017. And what struck me is, there was a lot of flooding and just billions of dollars of damage. And what struck me is how the community really pulled together. This thing about, oh, just let me know if you need any help isn't just lip service. You would get the call and you would drive around the neighborhoods where you could drive around, and you just see people clearing out houses, ripping down drywall to get at the mold. It's phenomenal,
yeah.
like the support that you see. So within, I mean, the level of damage was, I've never seen anything like it. You go move through the city, it's incredible. But what was more surprising and really blew me away was how quickly it recovered. We drove around, and it's like this place was underwater 7 days ago, and people are, and it's, you don't see signs of it. You'll see, damage and things, and obviously people were displaced and uh, really heavily impacted. But if you look at how the community came alongside them,
Mhm.
you know, friends just putting up families for months at a time
Yeah.
and giving them a car. It's like, hey, here's a car. Come and
Yeah.
live in our guest room, with no expectation of any payback or things like that. So there's this generosity of spirit that, and again, you have to compare Texas. You can't say that's the case in America, right? I don't think, I don't have enough knowledge to say if it would have been the same in Arkansas or Louisiana or anything like
Well,
that. I just know Texas.
we lived through a couple of hurricanes in Florida, but we didn't have much destruction. They're very geared up in Florida, but we were right in the middle of the storm up in western North Carolina when Hurricane Helene
Oh,
hit us a few
yeah.
months ago, and it it just destroyed the whole area.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Thousands
Yeah.
and thousands of trees down in our town. We actually had to leave the school shut, no power for 2 months, nothing. But that sense of community where all the neighbors got out, tried to find all the able bodies to come and chainsaw all the disabled bodies or the older people out. And we just
Yes.
systematically cut our way out of the neighborhood for a week to the main road. And all the neighbors were involved, even if they couldn't do much physically, if they were too old, they were cooking food. They were getting
Yes.
blankets. They were
Yeah.
making sure people had water out, where we were cutting. It was phenomenal. So even more kind of impressive than the force of a hurricane was the force of recovery and people's spirit. These Americans
Yes.
are, in that sense, so generous. It's not just lip
Yes.
service.
And
It's
that,
not a competition to see who can recover first. It's like let's all help each
that's
other, then
right.
we all recover. So yeah,
Yes.
I
And
would
what's
agree.
yeah, and what's really interesting is, if you spend any time listening to any sort of media source, you get this idea of, this loggerheads that everyone's at each other's throats the whole time. And then
No.
in the community, there was no question where you came from, what language you spoke, what color of your skin was. If you needed help, you were getting
Now,
help.
what's your
And
political party, your religion, whatever.
yeah,
On the news, you just see
that's right.
people thinking, oh, the liberals and the Republicans are at it all day in the streets.
Yes,
There's none of that.
that's
Most people are just in the
correct.
middle, just nice.
Yes,
So,
I always say the reason people are complaining about those little things is because all the big ones have been solved. So,
yes.
um, so yeah,
But I want to
to
just get
your
us
rich,
back. We
yeah.
can talk about the politics, but that's not
Oh,
really what
sure.
Oorsee does. We're interested in this business, man. And I've watched your
Mhm.
videos, and on the I've made a lot of biltong for these Americans, and I love that you filmed them and see the joy on their face. I'm gonna post some of that
Yes,
over B-roll over what we talk now, but speak to him about starting this business, trying to get the culture of the Americans to change, to try this new thing, and
yes,
their reaction to biltong compared to jerky. And if you can maybe just explain to people what is jerky and the process of making that so they can understand. It's not just the same but different. It's a different process of making and
correct.
smoking. So if you
Yes,
could do that and then tell us
sure.
about your passion for the good beef.
Yeah, so this is funny because normally I'm explaining how biltong is different. So it'll be interesting explaining why jerky
The
is
other way
different.
around.
Yeah, that's right. So the main difference, jerky is there's a application of heat, where biltong to be biltong has to be air dried. So no heat application. That heat, if it's big industrial process, they'll actually it's pretty disgusting, but they'll boil the whole cuts of beef, like what we would call silver side. They call that a top round here. They would boil that and then cut it up thin, then smoke it and then dry it. So it becomes very leathery and very uh, almost crumbly, like falls apart, like powder. That's the industrial stuff. And then, the more um, let's call it craft jerky for lack of a better term, they would follow a much more simplified process where they would cut it up and smoke it and then pack it. So the main difference I always say is that biltong is dried and then sliced, and jerky is sliced and then dried. So the jerky, those little jerky slices that you get, they've been dried like that in
Mm.
thin steaks and then kind of tore up and put into packets. So the jerky is a much drier product that typically has some form of smoke flavor with it. And then it's also often tumbled or injected with a marinade, which is high in different sorts of additives and so on. And that was one of our challenges, is to differentiate biltong from jerky through the ingredients, because just it being delicious isn't sufficient for the American palate. I always compare it to um, often the guidance is just say biltong is better than jerky. It's like, no, you can't do that. Imagine trying to sell jerky in South Africa. Like people will look at you, are you stupid?
Yeah.
Because there's this cultural connection to beef jerky. And I've had and I probably need to turn in my South African passport for saying this even, but I've had jerky that I really enjoyed. A good friend of mine has made some game jerky that I thought was really good. It's a little bit thicker, it's a little not as dry, but the smoky flavor is actually pretty pleasant.
Yeah.
We were on a hunt, and I was chewing on this piece of leather meat or jerky, and it was really cool experience. It was the American experience, and that kind of, oh, hang on, I get this. This is as eating a chunk of biltong watching rugby is just a cultural experience for me. Sitting in a deer blind or one of these deer stands, hunting in the American fashion, eating jerky, that's a cultural thing for
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah, and
for
calling it
us,
just better than their cultural thing is very arrogant. It's
oh,
not
extremely.
received well. I mean, and people would
Yes.
joke, I was there too. I mean, it's like jerky but better. Right? But that's just being arrogant.
Yeah.
What I found works is I put both out now when we have people over, and they
Mm.
can watch a rugby game at us, and we'll go watch a Super Bowl at their house, or you try and integrate and join their customs too. You can't just force all your ideas on the locals. I mean, that's
Sure.
really not fitting in. So I would just put it side by side and say this is more of a different application for it, or this is just air dried, this is sliced differently, and let them try it and just get used to it first. And then
Yes.
bring in some other kind of applications. Like you have some recipes on your website that I really like. The muffin with the biltong and the feta cheese. My friends love
Oh,
that
that's really good.
recipe. It's
Yes.
a really great snack for when you're watching sport together, and they're all
Mhm.
into it now, right?
Yes,
So it's
there's a
if
there's a really good biltong quiche.
yeah.
I wonder if that's on there, which I really like. And it kind of gives you your man card back eating quiche is when you add a bunch of biltong to it. Like
Yeah,
you can
but
eat
it's like
you can eat
introduce
quiche with
if
this
you want to
biltong.
get American friends to eat more biltong, and we all want that to happen because it supports a lot of South African businesses as well,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And if and it transfers your culture, you're adding something to the American culture. They're much more open to foreign foods and stuff than I was anticipating. I mean, they all love the
Yes.
Mexican food and Tex-Mex and but also Vietnamese food and Lebanese food, and they're
Yes.
open to all kinds of trying new things. But
Oh yeah.
if you try and force it down their throat by saying ours is just better, it didn't work
No.
as well. But integrating it and getting them used to it, now they all love biltong and boerewors and all that stuff that we've given them, even
Yes.
fake cooked. So that's worked for
Yes,
us. Like,
exactly.
and you
Yeah.
have a business partner. Talk to me about. You still have that business partner from Texas?
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
co-founder Sean, he's a local Texan. He was born on a naval base in Japan, but he was born, raised in Texas. His parents are Texans, and I think that's been a big key, and it's certainly been a check on what we do. So he is at this point, he's still employed in another at another business. Um, but a lot of our initial development and flavor profile and things like that, we have a smoked chili pepper flavor.
Frankie. Here. That's really good.
That is
You gotta
tasty,
try
very
this.
tasty.
Is it really good?
I don't have to say anything at all. I just gotta do this right here.
Oh wow. Very meaty.
It's like charcuterie board. It's good.
Oh, that's nice.
Right?
Okay.
Thank you.
It's really good. It's so good.
It's like a nice,
and it's nice and soft.
a nice burn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
keeps on giving.
Love it.
Ingredients are sugar, 32 grams of protein. Pretty good, right?
That's really good.
That is tasty, very tasty.
So Frankie, we've been waiting for you the whole day. Oh, come on.
That is real good.
That's right. That's right there.
Wow. I need to buy some of that for my husband.
Or we like the spicy ones.
Yeah.
It's a smoked chili that we try. It's a uniquely Texan flavor. So we smoke the spices. So we use smoked spices. So the meat is still a biltong process, but we have these smoked chili powders that we use in the marinade process. So it's effectively like a peri peri blend, roughly speaking. But the idea is to bring to mind something like a fajita steak, which is very Texan. We called our company TexasBiltong Company. And that's exactly, I personally, I love the state. I think Texas is fantastic. It makes tough people. I always say it's an arrogant state with much to be arrogant about.
I like that. Yeah.
So, I have no qualms about it. And my, like I said, co-founder is Texan. Our main sales guy is a dyed in the wool Texan, although he's a transplant from Colorado, so he might not like me saying that, but every time he's selling, he's got his cowboy hat on and, arrives on his big motorcycle, talks the talk. And, we are trying to create a business for the local market, not for South Africans. Not because I have anything against the South African market. I just think so many of us are making our own biltong. In fact, I will still make biltong for myself if I go hunting or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I can add stuff in there that I can't do in our commercial process. So our commercial process is very clean. You were talking earlier about the ways into the market. So comparing the two by taste and texture, but also ingredients has been a big one for us. So we've removed things like the Worcester sauce that you would use in a normal biltong marinade, or any of the kind of spice mixes that has any glutens or MSG or things like that. So we've had to get a little creative, which I won't share exactly how we solved it, but it's a pretty cool solution to get that umami flavor into biltong without using things like Worcester sauce and mushroom powders and things like that. And it, delivers a product that I like. I live on the stuff myself. I probably need to start adding a line item to our balance sheet for for withdrawals.
JH has eaten half the profit.
That's right. I'm going to put it as director's fees and see if someone notices. But with the intention of creating a sustainable local business. So, we use Amazon as a big distributor to get it to people, because that's where the buyers are. That also means that we have to have USDA inspection, so you can't get away with like a local inspection. And for a time, we had the only inspected facility in Texas, which was pretty cool. And we, worked with the lab to get all of our process. It took us 18 months to build a facility and get it inspected and get the lab results. So the USDA don't trust this thing that's never heated, but is still food safe. So
Yes.
we had to prove again and again how safe it is, this multi-hurdle approach. And anyway, it all got very complicated. We use a co-packer now to manufacture. The volumes are just too much for us to handle ourselves. And so it needs to end up looking like any sort of snack food business, but that has a deeper meaning behind it. So it's we're going a lot slower than some of our competitors. There are ways of getting into the big retailers. I don't think that's wise. I might be wrong. I think building a community around the product first is where the action is. Get people to care about it, and then start looking at the retailers. So we work with small individual retailers. We work with regional distributors. We've got 2 airports here in Texas now that both in Houston that are stocking it, and they're moving quite a lot of product for us. So I think those kind of incremental steps, because the barrier to entry is a cultural one, not merely a financial one.
Yeah.
You need to have some unique approaches. And we've learned some expensive lessons, just on things that don't work. Traditional Google advertising for an e-commerce
Mm.
business, for example,
Yeah.
for return, you need to be very well funded to create a return on that. So
Yeah.
so we've seen much better results on finding where our buyers are and
Mm.
getting in person and things like that. Um,
And then
yeah,
tell me, there's a lot of South Africans now, like I said, looking to the US as a possible future. What is it like to be an entrepreneur in the US compared to maybe South Africa in terms of business law, ease of setup? I mean, I need people to
yeah.
understand because I've started several businesses in the US. There's a lot less red tape.
It's incredible. And what's even because the market for business is so big, if you get stuck, you can pay someone not a lot of money to help you out. I think of we needed to create a pretty complicated structure with some international shareholding, and I paid a lawyer 5 hours, so under $1,000, and got it all figured out. So the not only is the restrictions or the red tape so much less, but on top of that, the ability to solve those problems that you come across is just so easy. We've had a couple of times, especially during COVID, where we had to try and get some stuff solved and get some stuff in from South Africa. And Sean wrote to our local representative, like in the government, and within a week we got a response. When he wrote the letter, I'm like, okay, now fine, we'll find another way. And
Now you're taking
sure
the
enough,
piss, right?
yeah,
It's not going to
exactly.
happen.
And sure enough, we got a letter back from the office of that representative saying, well, this is how the regulation is written. This is what you need to provide. And yeah, we got the people in that we needed to eventually. So I think from a entrepreneur's perspective, there's two things that stand out to me. The first is how easy it is to solve problems. It really is a pro-business culture. And secondly is the size of the market, the size of the
Oh, it's insane.
availability. Like you think Texas, I love comparing Texas to South Africa because there are a lot of similarities, both, in terms of the size, but also roughly 50 million people, so about the same. But South Africa is, I don't know, 30th in the world in terms of GDP. I don't know exactly where, but if Texas was a country on its own, it would be top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
So you don't even need to. I was talking to kind of a business mentor of sorts, and we were talking about, shoring up our distribution to Colorado and to different outdoor sort of regions. And he said, "Hey, if you can just capture your zip code in this place, you'll have a success." And
Yeah.
that's exactly
That's
right.
right.
You have 50 million people, but of those 50 million, probably 45 have expendable income to pay on a luxury good, which is where Biltong would be. So I think once
That's right.
once we got it into our heads that the South African market for Biltong is not where the action is, I think that's starting to open doors now.
Mm.
I'd love to tell you how to run a successful Biltong business, but you're going to need to give me about 2 years, and then then I'll let you know.
Well, when you mentioned about some red tape over the quality, and that I agree when there's government involvement,
Yes,
they have to make sure the product is safe. It's a new unknown quantity, but they will come and check. But their only purpose there is to make sure it's safe, not to come
yes,
and tell you how to run your business or
exactly.
what percentage you give away. So when we talk about red tape, there is very little, and it's only really about quality or safety, not how do you run your business, who you can sell to. All that stuff is in South Africa, right? You will be shocked when
Yes,
you come over here and you start your business, you fill in the forms and it's yours.
yeah,
Make or break, it's yours. But
yeah,
that also takes away all your excuses, right?
yes.
If you
That's
fail.
exact.
The
That's
market is
exactly right.
massive. the opportunity is there. You have so much local government and federal support to make a business successful. If you do fail, that really is on you, right?
Yes. And I was, and that's such a good point. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about, oh, but there's so many of these biltong brands coming online now. And I said, look, the market for dried meat in general is $5 billion. $5 billion. There's space for 100 biltong companies, and
Yeah.
we'd all be making good money.
Yeah.
In fact, I welcome it because every time someone makes a social media post about biltong, the word gets out there.
Yes.
And if a company like Strive is spending $250,000 a month on social media marketing, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah.
Let
Well,
them
what
let
would
them
be the
try that,
best
and
thing? Have a big Biltong festival in a couple of years in Texas, invite everybody and make it a whole thing. And people can compare. I mean, how many smoked barbecue places do you have in Texas or North
yes,
Carolina? There's space for
yeah.
everybody if you, even if you,
Oh,
especially if you work together. So we'll
yes, and
support
and
everybody.
I think it's not far away, to be honest. We've started having some conversations to that effect. Um, yeah, it's coming. Uh, I know a very successful entrepreneur in Houston that does these events and has a store and so on. And when we were at an event last year, that was something he mentioned. Hey, how many of these biltong things can you pull together? Let's do something. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's something we want to do. And yeah, it's such an exciting time. And now especially it looks like pro-business thinking is back. The red tape's
Yes.
disappearing even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good place to be. And I think to answer the original question is for South Africans considering Texas, my message, roughly speaking, would be it's far more difficult than you can ever imagine moving to Texas because it creates tough people. But because of that, it's far more rewarding than you can ever imagine. I've made such good friendships, such close community with really, really good people that I wouldn't trade for the world.
Hmm.
Even if my accent every now and again slips into a hard R, it's still worth it.
Oh, so my last question is just how can these guys get hold of you? How can they get on the website? We'll put the link, because I promise I'll only take half an hour of your time. Uh, I'll post some, like I said, B-roll stuff about the company, but how do they get hold of you? How do they order? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, best way to go is txbiltong.com. And just for those people listening that want to try it out, Biltong VIP is a promo code that they can use. That'll get them a nice little discount. Also on Amazon.com, we've got a store there. And if they're flying through Houston Airport, probably that's the easiest way just to grab a bag. But also all the stores where we are is listed on our website, txbiltong.com.
Thank you so much for your time, Jared. I hope we'll speak again and we'll keep track of your business and all the best, mate.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you.